The ACC meetings in Amelia Island, there was peace, tranquility, and one prevailing storyline, plus Pete goes to camp. This is the College Game Day podcast. We are recording on May 14th, a Wednesday. Glad to have you with us. And Pete, I went to Amelia Island for the ACC meetings, and unlike some recent years, there was a real positive vibe around the conference. It was mostly due to the tranquility that has been the result of the lawsuits being largely settled for the moment. Everybody knows what conference they're going to be in. People aren't looking for the exit door. And yet, the prevailing storyline was surrounding North Carolina head coach Bill Belichick, because there was a lot of, wow, that's Bill Belichick. Even with all the other things going on around him, people were still kind of getting used to the idea that this is reality, that he's a head coach in college football in the ACC at Carolina.
I mean, it is still a little bit surreal to see him on social media in the powder blue. We were lucky enough to go to North Carolina practice, Rece, when we were down in Chapel Hill for college basketball game day at the end of the season. And the image of Bill Belichick kind of flipping the whistle, like you've seen 100 times. I live in Boston, so in the local news clip, it's like Tuesday Patriots practice. There's Bill flipping his whistle, walking around. And to see that in a college practice with no numbers, by the way, which made it a challenging practice to, probably the way Bill wanted it, probably challenging practice to glean a lot from. I think it is unequivocally his foray into college football. Will it work? How long will it last? And he build them with a very favorable schedule into a strong ACC program is the most compelling storyline of college football. With all respects to Arch, I mean, he's an internationally known figure going into the ACC. It is completely compelling on every level. I'm fascinated. I think part of the reason I'm fascinated, Rece, is I really don't know if it's going to work. Like, I can't stand on the table and say they're going to go 11-1. I'm not this fatalist who thinks they're going to go 6-6. It's really, really interesting.
A couple of things. First of all, let's start with this. I had a chance to sit down for a special episode of ACC Huddle that's going to air this summer, and I imagine that it will air on other platforms as well. And we're going to make sure that we get large segments of the conversation to bring to you on the College Game Day podcast as well. But I went into a room with Bill Belichick and Dabo Swinney, and the three of us sat at a table, and we were in there for an hour or so. And they rolled the cameras, and we tried to make it and did make it as conversational and as storytelling as possible. It was, it was not the forum for a gotcha interview. Hey, how are things with your lady friend, or your girlfriend? I mean, that wasn't the forum for that. Though you certainly were able to draw some conclusions about all of the reports that have been out lately. But that's going to be out this summer. It was a really fascinating conversation, and the interest between the two coaches who did not and do not know each other particularly well. Certainly knew each other by reputation. Dabo thought that they had met. He knew they had met once in person prior to Bill taking the job, and thought perhaps maybe in passing twice when he was a young assistant at Alabama. So there's not a deep personal relationship between the two, but here are two coaches, one of whom has 6 Super Bowl rings and won 2 more as a coordinator, the other with 2 national championships and a national championship ring as a player. And they're, by the way, going to play October 4th. And to have them sit down and talk about the state of college football, about how they approach their programs, about leadership, about identifying players without numbers on their jerseys, as you alluded to, Pete. I asked him about that. I was like, Bill, we were at practice that day. How? And he goes, well, get to know your players. I said, I understand that. I said, but you were new there. What was the process of getting to know so that you could figure out how your players move and walk? And he talked a moment about that, but then also talked about getting fooled by the McCourty twins on numerous occasions, including one that you would know, this Patriots fan, and I had the conversation, but it's slipping my mind, whether it was Jason or Devin one year at the Super Bowl. One was on the team and one wasn't. And so the one that wasn't on the team anymore had moved on, walked by and said, hey, coach, I'm I'm going to be late for meetings tonight. I've got stuff to do. And Bill said, I was like, well, what do you mean you're going to be late for meetings? And then the other one, I think it was Devin that was still on the team. I think there was don't worry, coach, I'll be there on time. And he realized that he had been had. But, just things like that we talked about a lot. But the story of the week, Pete, has been the situation with Jordan Hudson, which he referred to on SportsCenter with Christine Williamson as a personal relationship that, as he put it, it's on the side. Now, if we can step away from college football for just a moment, I've got to say that that's probably going to cause him some consternation too, because I can't imagine any type of romantic relationship that you refer to as on the side is not going to be greeted with some type of reprimand from maybe perhaps phrasing it better and just away from football. But what have you made of all of this? This stuff, I've been wrong before. I'm not going to sit here and go at another reporter and say that, their sources are no good. They don't know. I will say this from my interactions, from my talks, both on camera and off, this notion that it's even a remote possibility that somehow he wouldn't coach seems preposterous to me. I mean, so anyway, all of this seems to be off-season fodder because of the magnitude of who he is more than anything else.
I think everything with Bill Belichick we're going to find, Rece, is going to be amplified. Like if they beat TCU in the opener that Monday night, they're going to go win the national championship. It's going to be the big, and if they lose on a last-second field goal, this experience, we will experience a different level of hyperbole. A little bit like when Nick was at Alabama. Remember, every loss was like, the dynasty's over. They lost to Hugh Freeze and Ole Miss. How could it, And then things worked out just so. I think there will be the lesson from the last few weeks, which I do think in 3 months we're gonna remember when everyone freaked out over that CBS interview, is that everything will be in a different kind of focus with Bill Belichick and with North Carolina. I think if there's anything tangible to glean out of the statements and interactions the last 3 weeks, what Bill said was clear and was clearly planned, and what UNC has said was clear and clearly planned. And then going forward, we won't see Jordan Hudson affiliated with UNC football other than being Bill Belichick's girlfriend. And I think that's the line of delineation that UNC has clearly put here. Bill said it himself. She doesn't have anything to do with UNC football. UNC, in their statement last week, came out and said she doesn't have anything official to do with UNC football. So I feel like that's where we are with this. The lines are set, and I feel like going forward, this likely won't be that big of a deal.
I agree with you, Pete. And the other thing, they did say Carolina. I mean, she's welcome at the facility. I imagine she's helping him with the social media presence, which a lot of coaches nowadays, need. And so I'm not gonna be surprised if she's around.
She'll be around. I'm not intimating that. Deal. I'm just saying formally, she's not going to do anything with UNC football. But yeah,
I don't. Would anyone have expected otherwise?
Yeah.
That's. I don't think she's going to be talking about the proper hand placement for the three techniques, is she?
I don't think so. I think she'll just resume a role as a coach's significant other, and that's that's completely that's completely fine. The ban from the facility thing, Rece, made me laugh because it was reported as specifically banned from the facility, and I saw it that morning, and I was like, well, that's just not true. She didn't rob a bank.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Some of what's been reported, like the hyperbole of it, got a lot of the headlines. He won't come back. The ban from the facility, and they just weren't true. Yeah. The core here is that UNC has made it clear, and Bill Belichick's made it clear that any sort of formal role within the program is just not going to exist, and that's really what's coming out of this. And that's not a particularly interesting headline, quite frankly. And it doesn't speak to anything greater other than roles over there. I do know, and you know this, Rece, because UNC didn't even have a PR person when we were there for practice that day. They were in flux in that department. It seems as if, and this is my intimation, she probably tried to fill a need because they were a couple bodies short. They filled those bodies now. They have good PR people. They're moving on.
The notion of celebrity coaches' wives or significant others, that's not new. I mean, the whole Notre Dame USC series way back in the day started in large part because of Rockney's wife.
Oh, really? I mean, I don't know that story.
Yeah, Rockney's wife, they were going to do a series with, as the story goes, they were going to do a series with Nebraska. And Rockney's wife, I think I have this part right, met with Howard Jones, the USC coach's wife, and was like, well, the weather's better here. And so if you're going to make a late season train trip, I guess, or maybe they, flew later on, but if you're going to make a late season trip, you might as well go to Los Angeles instead of Lincoln as it pertains to weather. So, these things happen. They go. The Belichick thing, as you mentioned earlier, is going to be magnified and amplified. The one thing, though, I would say is that Carolina's used to this a little bit with Roy Williams having been there, and obviously in the previous era, Dean Smith and even Mac Brown. When you hire a coach with some serious equity, and Dean obviously didn't have that when, for all the nitpickers out there, Dean developed that. I know that. And I know he was not popular when he was hired. Roy had equity when he was hired. Yeah. And certainly Bill Belichick has it to the nth degree. So you're going to need to let him run it. And it wouldn't be terribly surprising in the ecosystem of college football if there's somebody in the mix that ruffles a feather or two here or there, whether in booster land or supporter land or wherever. But you're going to have to let him run it, and they are, and they will, because that's how he does things. That's how it's going to work.
The one thing that when I made a few calls on this last week, Rece, that was very clear to me and explicitly stated and pounded over my head was any notion that he's like checked out or not working or not, and like it's just like completely false, like total gobbledygook. Like we'll walk away. Like that guy's in the building pre-dawn. He's the last one there. Like Bill Belichick is completely and fully obsessed with football in the same way he was when he started his career as an NFL assistant like 50 years ago. And that hasn't changed. Some would even say he's like energized by all the new of college football. There's just a whole new paradigm of rules and context and everything. It's just a whole new platform, portal evaluation. But yeah, there is no like any hint or notion that like this he's just going to walk. Like that is just silly. Like he's there, he's going to coach the season. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's going to coach for 10 years, Rece, right? Like hire a 73-year-old. It's it's the clock's ticking on some type of exit within a few years. But the notion he would walk away from this now is that's just crazy.
Well, and if you have any doubts about that, you could probably ask the head coaches who were in the coaches meeting, which is prior to the interview that he and Dabo did with me. They were about an hour late for it and for the interview. And a lot of that was because there was some hearty discussion, and some of that discussion was sparked by Bill Belichick asking questions, and being actively engaged in the meeting. He wasn't, now he didn't go in there. One of the questions I asked him, Pete, I was like, look, I said, Dabo just said it sort of semi-jokingly. I was sitting here with Bill Belichick. I said, I've seen it in the hallways. I said, what's the weight of that? Do you feel that? And he immediately went to, look, I'm the rookie. I'm the rookie here in the ACC. And I was like, no, you're not a rookie in any room you're in. But, he was, Dabo said, really engaged. And Dabo appreciated it because he understands the weight that Bill Belichick's perceptions and opinions and judgments of situations carry. So from what I was able to ascertain from being around Bill, from talking to some of the other people around the ACC, that assessment is 1,000% correct. Yeah. He's in, he's locked in. He was even talking, subtle differences in the specialist and the college game and things like that they're going to deal with. I asked him about the rugby punt. I actually was really hoping he would tell me how much he hated it because, I'm no fan of the rugby punt.
I'm aware.
I just do not I don't enjoy it. I respect the skill of it. And Belichick actually made me think about it a little bit more. Probably offends my old school sensibilities, but Belichick was talking about, the skill and the field position, and immediately went to the tactical side of it. And I'm like, yeah, let's go drill that rugby punter and no penalty, or something. But, even if he's already kicked it, I don't care. Just hit him for getting outside the tackle box and punting it or something. But, which I know you can hit him differently. I know that, but he's engaged in the nuances of the rules. He's engaged in the differences in the nuances of time management. All these things. He's not rolling in there going, "Hey, look at my Super Bowl rings. Just wait till the big trophy comes to Chapel Hill." He's doing his job.
Yeah. I would imagine those meetings have changed quite a bit. That meeting room has changed quite a bit from last year to this year. Dave Clawson had a huge voice in that league. He had some of and I'm not sure what they call in the ACC, but he was one of the kind of the head of the coaches committee for a while, and had earned a really strong voice. And then Mac Brown's going to be a strong voice in every room he's in. So in a lot of ways, I would think Dabo's probably happy to have another really accomplished coach there, high end, because he obviously has the 2 national titles. Then there's some other obviously very good coaches in there. Pat Narduzzi's been there a long time. If I'm thinking off the top of my head here, there's other guys. Mario Cristobal's been head coach a long time, some big places. But there's probably not there's probably not like that the ACC equity built up like like Dave had. I guess Manny Diaz has been an ACC coach for a while. It's just been a couple different stops. But there's not the same amount of equity there.
Well, you've got guys with NFL pedigrees who've been head coaches in the NFL, Bill O'Brien and Frank Reich, at least for this year, or however long he stays as the interim head coach at Stanford. So you've got some of that. Dabo even talked about, I think it's back-to-back weeks. He's calling it the Patriots tour because they play Carolina and then they play BC. He said,
that's funny.
He said, I've got the defensive guru from the Patriots, and we got the offensive guy from the Patriots. He says, I'll be studying the Patriots. And so, they engaged each other back and forth. It surprised me a little bit, Pete, that they didn't know each other. I mean, just from, I would think, or didn't really know each other well. Pro days, scouting the number of players that Clemson's had drafted. In the entire time that Bill Belichick was the head coach of the Patriots, they never drafted a player from Clemson.
I was just about to Google that because I didn't think they did. There could have been a 7th rounder that slipped by me, but I didn't. I did not think they did.
They did have Dwayne Allen, who they signed, who played on a couple of their Super Bowl teams.
Yep.
But they never drafted one. But he was effusive in his praise for Clemson products, particularly Christian Wilkins.
He would have known Christian. Remember, Christian's from Springfield, and then played at Suffield Academy. And Bill doesn't miss much. Bill doesn't miss much that's local. That's not surprising. Christian Wilkins, well, what a great kid to cover he was when he was down there. What a great personality, and not surprised. Was he the 14th pick in the draft, something like that?
Yeah, I think so. He was. It was funny, just to your point, Bill just rattled all of that off. Where Christian was from, played at Suffield, just sort of boom, 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 and then went into, talking about trying to double team him. They couldn't, all of that kind of thing. You know what else? The other thing that they had in common, Pete, and we're going to play you some clips on the podcast as we go through the next few weeks. We're not going to do it every podcast, and we'll play a longer version of it as we get closer to release. But one of the things that they both have in common is that they have an eye for talent for athletes who aren't football players at the moment. In fact, I accused Dabo of being a fake Clemson basketball fan. I said, all those Clemson basketball games that I've called over the last couple of years and see you over there sitting in the stands cheering. I said, I'm thinking, boy, this guy loves Clemson hoops. Nah, we're just trying to get Ian Shefflin to come be a tight end for you, and it finally worked. The persistence paid off. But, Bill had done that as well, and we sort of laughed about that for a moment. And then I brought up, Bill's love of lacrosse and Chris Hogan, but it was a different guy that, let's play this clip for you, a different guy that Belichick says was his best find in terms of a football player who did not have a football background?
Honestly, my best one was wrestling. With Steve Neal.
Yes.
Steve Neal lost in the Olympics to Lesnar, and then didn't play football in junior high, didn't play football in high school, didn't play football in college. Said, hey, can I try to play football? And poor Steve, he didn't know where the huddle was. It's like, where do I go at the end of the play? Steve, you go back here with the rest of these guys. They'll tell you what to do. Started for us for 7 years. Yeah. Great balance, tremendous strength. Tough. Leverage. All day tough. Leverage, yes.
Every wrestler that we have signed at Clemson has become a great football player for us. Grady Jarrett was probably my top guy. He was a 2-star recruit. Came to, and I'm just like, this guy's amazing. His motor, but he was a wrestling champ. And, that translates. And, I mean, he's been playing. He's on year 11 now.
Yeah, really tough.
Sacked Brady 3 times.
Oh, I know.
That I wasn't pulling for you that one. That was an unbelievable comeback.
We were sliding to him, too.
Yeah.
So.
But, you're so right, the wrestling component. And you see a lot of basketball kids, skill guys, that go all basketball that I think limit their opportunity. Whereas if they did play football, great receivers, great safeties, great quarterbacks. I mean, there's so many running backs. That's why I've always told kids, man, play. Yeah. Go play. Create opportunity for yourself. Don't limit your opportunity. And I've seen several guys that have benefited from that played both. I love multi-sport guys, especially wrestlers.
Yeah, we've encouraged them to come in and play 2 sports, figure out which one's a good sport. Exactly. Maybe it's basketball, maybe it's football, maybe it's lacrosse, maybe it's football. We'll see. I'm good with that.
So, Pete, certainly Steve Neal is not a player that is unfamiliar to you by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, so we're going to go the Wayback Machine here, Rece, for when I was early in my career at the New York Times, living in Boston. I wrote a profile of Stephen Neal January 20th, 2005. So this would have been on one of their playoff runs. I actually think that's the year they won the Super Bowl. Anyway, Stephen Neal is unbelievable story. Just as Bill detailed there, had never played and. Found himself. He and Bill actually share an agent, Neil Cornrich, out of Cleveland. That was kind of part of the story. Neil's a big wrestling guy, and but like and this was before they had like the developmental stuff. You know what I mean? Like they took a chance on Stephen Neal, brought him in, and he was a linchpin during that early run of success there. I mean, it was an absolute linchpin. This is Stephen Neal's mother to me in 2005. It's a miracle, but at the same time, knowing Stephen, I'm not shocked. So that was one of the all-time Belichick, kind of finds, and it was interesting to hear them talk about leverage and like that stuff's really really cool. And I do think in this world where everything is quantified and analyzed, like there are less surprises, right? Just like the way things are. There's less sleepers. There's less surprise. So Stephen Neal was just a completely off the grid surprise.
So more on Dabo and Belichick as we get closer to that. It was a really entertaining and fascinating time to spend with both of them, and look forward to seeing them play on October 4th, and we'll have more on that special a little bit later on. One of the other things that happened at the ACC meetings, this happened the day after I had left, but apparently a scream that reverberated through the halls of the beautiful, fantastic Ritz-Carlton in Amelia Island was Miami celebrating a recruiting win, picking up big offensive linemen there. So it's not all Belichick, not all Dabo. Miami's involved in this, outgunning the competition and getting some recruiting wins, Pete.
Any buzz on Carson Beck down there? Did you run across anybody from Miami that gave you any?
I know what Mario said was that he's ready to start throwing. So I mean that's going to be a big thing, and that's another thing. Talking about some of this stuff in addition to getting Jackson Cantwell, the offensive lineman, and recruiting. They're also doing a good job in the portal, and the stuff came out how everything's magnified with Carson Beck. Nobody likes him. Georgia teammates didn't like him. Miami teammates don't like him. And then all of a sudden, this clip comes out of these guys having the time of their lives out there, and Carson Beck cheering on everybody. So It's the what did the head ball coach Steve Spurrier? It's talking season. Yep.
My question was more about his comeback, his shoulder, where they thought he was. That because
I think he's been clear. I think he's going to be cleared. If he's not cleared, he's cleared pretty soon, is my understanding. So
Carson Beck, in terms of like a program going boom or bust, is one of the key figures in college football this year. If he regains his form from 2 seasons ago, Rece, I think you have to slot Miami in a different conversation than if he's still, if he struggles to come back or there's some injury setbacks or anything like that. Like he's a giant piece. It's a fascinating risk reward, I think, for Miami there.
So did you find any future Jackson Cantwells at your tour of the new? And I was sorry I couldn't join you doing this. I couldn't, but you were at the Avon Old Farm School for Boys. You were kind enough to send me a photograph of the finest school for boys in all of the land, where some of the nation's future stars were at a prospect camp.
Yes. So I started the day. So the listeners probably deserve like the whole architecture of this, the context of this conversation. So the Avon coach, John Hooley, who's a veteran college coach, who's now the coach at Avon, which is a prep school in central Connecticut.
Not just a prep school, Pete, it's the prep school.
Sorry.
Continue.
Sorry.
Wait,
yeah, Rece's son, Chris Davis, went there. So Rece's.
I gave the commencement address there once.
Oh, really? Wow. Yes.
I think every graduating young man in that class went on to better things because of the 11 minutes he spent with me.
Yeah, we are unbiased on this podcast, as we often say. Rece Davis is biased towards Avon Old Farms. I can assure you of that. So what it is basically there's not a ton of prospects in Massachusetts and Connecticut, right? And I think there's a New Jersey version of this too. So what they do for national coaches is they say, okay, here are 8 prep schools. We're going to start at Brunswick, which is kind of down in southern Connecticut, more towards New York City, at 6 a.m. You can see you can see all the players at Brunswick work out, and then you can go to Cheshire Academy at 8:45. So I have to admit, I did not go all the way to Brunswick, although their best player is the son of NFL executive Brian Roloff. The things you learn standing on the sidelines. And I did go to Cheshire Academy to see Keegan Croucher. He's one of the top 2027 quarterbacks. He's actually from upstate New York. He's been at Cheshire for a couple of years. And just to give an example, there's probably, and Cheshire has a bunch of other players too, but there's probably 50, 60 college coaches. You got Bryant, you got UMass, you have UNH, you have Villanova, Rutgers, Boston College, et cetera, et cetera. The Croucher popped Kenny Guyton, the quarterback coach from Wisconsin, was there. Indiana had their quarterback coach there. And there were other, like BC obviously is on him. He's a local kid. So he's got a good offer list that's growing, and there was clearly some interest. And then from there, I skipped a few stops and went to Avon Old Farms. As usual, John Hooley has that place loaded. Then stopped in the evening at Springfield Central. It was a tailback named Isaiah Rogers, who has offers from Nebraska, Notre Dame, really good player. And then the next day I went to Dexter Southfield, which has a commitment from Anthony Hall, who's going to North Carolina. He's an interior offensive lineman, really impressive kid. There were 3 coaches from North Carolina there. So they haven't quit recruiting yet either. Will Friend, the offensive line coach, was there. There were a couple other Tar Heel assistants around. He's a coveted player. He's one of the best players in Massachusetts. So he's very good. And then I saw a really interesting player too, named Peter Bork, quarterback at Tabor Academy, down by Cape Cod. He's one of the top quarterbacks in 2026 as well. You would not have joined me on this much of the tour, Rece. This is me going probably a little over. Peter Bork, Penn State's quarterback coach, was there. Chandler Whitmer from Indiana was there again. BC, like he's got Michigan, like he's like a top 5 real guy, which we don't have here in Massachusetts that often. He's a little bit of an older player, physically developed, pretty impressive. And they've got a couple Tabor looked good on the hoof. They had some good Coach Moore had some good linemen there. So it was fun. Also fun to stand on the sidelines. We have a lot of podcast fans around. That's what you learn from school administrators, assistant coaches, different places. So it's fun to kind of chat about the pod a little bit. I teased them that you were slacking in Amelia Island.
I'm sure you didn't inform them because the original plan was I was going to join you for. I never had a plan to be at Brunswick at 6 a.m.
Yeah, no, I was not going to go to Brett. That's also really far from me too. So
Yeah.
I left my house at 5 a.m., but I wasn't going all the way to Brett. That's like a 3-hour drive for me. So I was happy to pull into Cheshire. Jimmy McCarthy, the Cheshire AD, is a old friend of mine. He was an assistant basketball coach at Northeastern for about a decade, and he's a buddy. So not only did I drive 2 hours, but I also had to stop and get Jimmy coffee to start the day there at Cheshire. But no, good day. Always good to go out and see the next generation of college sports. Met a bunch of really impressive young men, and just fun to kind of sit around and talk to coaches. A lot of questions about the settlement. It's like, why didn't it get signed? It's like, well, it's complicated. So,
that was the thing. It was one of the things that in talking to Belichick and Dabo about was Belichick was like, just give us the rules.
yes.
Like, you know what? Give us the rule. I mean, maybe not with quite the same angst or tone that I did. But he's like, no, tell us what the rules are, and we'll follow them. And
from his lips to God's ears, Rece. Let's get some rules.
But I mean, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole again. But the problem is, who makes them? Who agrees to them? And I've said this a billion times on the podcast. All of them are just going to be taken into court if you just decide, hey, these are the rules. I read an article yesterday about, I guess Deloitte came into the ACC meetings and gave a presentation and said that, a high percentage of the collective-based NIL deals would not be approved by, this clearinghouse type mechanism, while 90% of them, I think the number was, outside with businesses would have been approved. I've had a couple of issues with this whole thing. Number one is that I for the life of me, don't know how that's not going to wind us up, pull us back into court. Once you start denying that these are valid business arrangements, and you're going to be pulled right back into court. And the other one is, I think the number that they had set was any deal worth more than $600. $600. I mean, $600? Seriously? I mean,
that's like one shoe.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the handshake line, in the 70s. Guys, when people come through and say, "Good game, son," you'll be able to figure it out from my past associations if you want to. And I think that he probably wouldn't care at all if I used his name, but I won't, Mark May. But at the end, he said, he used to say that he'd be sitting, they would have a big win, as they often did at Pitt in those days. People come through, and he said, I'd sit there and look really, really sad. He said, one of his booster friends would come by and go, well, what's wrong? He goes, I just don't have any money to take my girlfriend out this weekend. He said, miraculously, a few $100 wound up in my wallet. I don't know how that happened. So
weird. Yeah.
Strange. $600? Really?
Pretty good night out at Pittsburgh in the 80s for $600.
I don't know if it was 600 back then that he got, but, and by the way, I'm not impugning Pittsburgh or implying that they cheated or anything of the sort. That was part and parcel. Every school in the world there was no way to do anything about it. This was like Pete Thamel, Syracuse booster, walking through going, "Good game, son." Guy goes, "I can't take out my girlfriend." Pete feels bad. He gives him, he slips him a 50. That's, what are you going to do? And also what's wrong with it, as we found out now, nothing. But why they set the figure of 600 so that they have to, deal with all of these situations, if in fact this is what happens, is kind of ridiculous, to me, unless there's a taxation or a legal thing that I'm completely unaware of that has $600 as a threshold, which I can't imagine what it would be. But unless there's something like that I, blissfully unaware of, seems to me the figure would have at least been four digits, would have at least been, okay, under 1,000, whatever, but I don't know.
I've lived this now for 25 years or so, and you've obviously done a little bit longer, and I think you're 30 years at ESPN now. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I love the subtle way that you call me old.
Yeah, that's fair. You have great hair. You don't actually, you age backwards. So let's So I think this is the interesting thing for me going forward here is there's, this group of athletic directors that are kind of putting together this doctrine. And once the settlement comes, probably next week, there's going to be a new CEO of a company that's going to basically have some oversight and autonomy to make rulings on what's going to happen. Like there's going to be a new sheriff in town, for like lack of a better way to put it, right? And it's the new committee, the new idea, the new thing. And I like, without being like a total pessimist, like history would tell you like it's not going to work. And why is that not going to work? And it's because of the culture of the last few generations, which are rules are made in college football and then people find their way around rules. So in order to actually have the rules stick, you need to enforce them. Ryan Day mentioned this on the podcast to us 2 weeks ago, Rece, right? Like you without teeth, you have no system, is a paraphrase of what he said. And I think back to being in the arena in Providence about a month ago for the first round of the NCAA tournament, maybe 6 weeks now. And Mike Babinski, longtime athletic director at Purdue, he was, I believe, at Xavier before that. He said to me, quote, "It's the curse of the business. I've been in it for 40 years. A rule gets made and people don't say that's what we'll have to do. The first thing they say is, how do we get around it? How do we bend it to our purposes or objectives?" And that has to change. And I think like the challenge facing college sports isn't like, here's the settlement, here's the number, let's work to abide by the number. It's here's the settlement, here's the number. How do we build out infrastructure to get bigger than the number, right? And everyone now wants the rules followed, right? In the A4 commissioners, one of the real interesting nuances of this, Rece, is that the NCAA will have nothing to do with this. Now, they're not going to say this out loud, but they're throwing a party in Indianapolis. The enforcement, long their biggest headache, long like the thing that epitomized some of their ineptitude, is just gone. It's off their plate. And the Power Four commissioners are taking a stake in this, right? So let's just say, because we're talking about the ACC and we're talking about ACC meetings, let's just say Clemson gets in the crosshairs for, I'm using them because they're a big brand and they've won the national title recently for going around the cap. So Jim Phillips can be like, let's have the rules, let's enforce the rules. And then Clemson into the crosshairs. Well, everyone wants enforcement to that. Now we could do the same thing with Greg Sankey in Alabama, Tony Petitti in Michigan. We can go on and on. Brett Yormark with Oklahoma State, whatever it is, right? We could
Good job covering your bases.
Yeah,
Nice
cover
job.
my bases. We could say that, but like the harmony and synergy of let's make it work needs to go through. It was actually Babinski, Dan Wetzel and I did a story about this a couple weeks ago, and it was Babinski who said to me, I don't know if I used it in the story. He said basically like when there was Bountygate, they came out and they hammered Sean Payton, and nobody did bounties anymore. There has to be some learning, but because of lawsuits and because of, the culture of college athletics, like the first person who has to be made a lesson of, that's going to be a tough deal for that person. And I'm skeptical because of history that they will do it. Like history would dictate that's harder to do than just you can sit around and say, oh, you need to do it.
I'm skeptical of it, Pete, because of human nature. And this should not be misconstrued as to saying that they shouldn't strive for this. But why in the world would people in college sports, in college football particularly, think that they were going to be able to do something that virtually no other human endeavor can do? We have an exhaustive and extensive tax code. There are loopholes that are not against the rules. There are loopholes. People find them. There are loopholes in homeowners arrangements and associations. There are loopholes in traffic laws. There are loopholes everywhere. And even in places where I would argue, because of my personal foundation, that there are not loopholes, you can write the 10 Commandments on an index card, and we can't get those right. $1 to Dale Brown, who was the first person I ever heard say that. We can't get those right. And people try to manipulate those. And so now we're going to think, we're going to do these rules in college football and everybody's going to follow them and it's going to be just a great new era. No, you just have to have, like you alluded to, an effective way to deal with it when people get caught. People are always going to get caught or come up with something that they think is a loophole. I mean, maybe not. Maybe Bountygate's not the perfect example of that when they were giving cash prizes to Saints players who laid big hits on guys and stuff. Might not be the perfect example, but that was one that probably wasn't, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but probably wasn't explicitly written in the NFL handbook that you can't do. right? Maybe there was something about, bonuses or some such thing that, it would run in violation of. But you thought you found something, to motivate, sort of like, various defensive coordinators. I think it's Tony Gibson who has this history of like guys make big plays, not dirty ones, good plays. Like they get a piece of candy in the meeting, stuff like that, and so you're always looking for little things. So I think I don't have any objection to doing this. And in fact, I think we should, but people are going to howl in college football because you used the term make an example of earlier. Someone, if this goes forward, will be made an example of. Because when a coach, an administrator, whoever gets made an example of under this new structure, they're going to do what people in college football have done forever. You're only after me because you don't like me. You don't want Michigan, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Florida State, whoever it is. You don't want them to win. You hate them. What about them? They did this. What about him? He did that. And it's going to be very much like when you get stopped for speeding on the interstate. You say, why did you stop me? Everybody was going fast. And the guy goes, I can only stop one at a time, right? And, there might have been 5 more cars that were going 85 on the interstate. He can't get all of them. He just got you. And it's going to be very frustrating. And the people are going to say, what about him? What about him? What about him? They'll be right. In most cases, I would imagine those people probably are doing things that would run afoul of the rules. But it's not going to be smooth when this enforcement structure comes.
No.
It's not going to be the panacea, the be-all, end-all for making nice, smooth sailing for college football. There will be some choppy moments in it, I think. Not that it shouldn't happen. The aggregators might take this as me arguing against it. I'm not. I'm for it. It's good. I just want to limit and temper expectations as to what it's going to mean.
Yeah, and that Congress is going to come. It's a very just reliable body, very consistent, no chaos, and they're just going to come and say, college sports needs Congress. They do. They just need them, and more so than any presidential movement that we've seen some headlines about. More so than anything else, Congress has to come together. Now, initially, the line was,
I can get there. I don't know.
What was that?
I just can't quite get there.
That's fair.
It's probably because of the varying state laws. I understand that in theory, but boy, that just runs afoul of my sensibilities, I guess. So
yeah, it's like anyone who thinks Bill was saying, you just give us the rules. Anyone thinks just the settlement comes and the world is going to be simple. That is incorrect. That is radically incorrect. It will, and even if Congress comes in and codifies some of the things and offers some legal protections, it is still this world is designed for chaos. And here's what when I talk to coaches and we sit around at these recruiting events, they're like, well, are contracts going to be enforceable? Mike Lombardi had a great quote the other day on the ACC network.
I brought that up to Bill. Yeah. Great quote. Tell him what it was.
Hey, if you're going to run a multi-billion-dollar business, shouldn't your contracts be enforced? They're enforced at at John Hancock down in downtown Boston. They're enforced at Bear Stearns. They're enforced, contracts enforced at ESPN. They're enforced everywhere. Why would they not be enforced in college sports? So that's what we're at core basic things like that are still ambiguous at this point.
I think we've talked about some interesting things. Let's end on something fun. Have you seen the social media push for the great game day venue of the Vatican? Did you see that there was a big crowd outside? Someone said that the crowd awaiting the announcement of the Pope looked like a College GameDay crowd, and said, "What if they had College GameDay at the Vatican?" I mean, obviously Notre Dame would play it. Could it be anyone other than Notre Dame and BC?
Yeah, it'd kind of have to be.
Or do you bring Villanova up from the FCS, another Jesuit school?
Yeah, it would kind of have to be Notre Dame and BC. Sign me up.
Has to be Notre Dame for sure.
Sign me up for that. Here's Thamel in St. Peter's Cathedral, underneath, I'm trying to remember the name of the ceiling, the famous ceiling. Live from Vatican City. Have they ever had a big American football game in Rome? Sistine Chapel. Yeah, Sistine Chapel. Probably should know that. Only 12 years of Catholic school.
Yes.
You know, the famous place with the paintings on the ceiling.
I'm Christian but Protestant, so some of those things are only familiar to me in terms of culturally more so than religiously.
And Adrian, our producer, just gave us a great idea. It's a good challenge to Matt Garrett, Jim Galliero, and our game day bosses. We need the Pope to be a guest picker this year. If we have a religious affiliated matchup somewhere,
we have to go there. Would you think he would come to us?
He's American Pope. He'd come to America. Imagine the Pope watched game day at some point, right? Like,
I hope so. I guess
he'd be a great picker.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Yeah. We throw Villanova in the role for him because he's a Villanova grad, and
well, there you go. I didn't know that he's a Villanova grad, so it has
I believe he is a Villanova grad.
Has to be FBS FCS matchup between the Fighting Irish and Villanova.
Hey, if they want to send game day to Rome, sign me up, man. I'm already picking the pastas that I'd eat.
Me too, my man. All right, Pete. That was fun. I'm glad that you made your camp tour and it got through efficiently. Everything.
There's one more camp left, Rece. There's two Massachusetts camps, so we may try to lure you still to the camp circuit before the season's done.
I would love to. It'd be great.
Yeah, come on up.
All right. Thanks for listening to the College Game Day podcast. You can download this wherever you prefer to get your podcast, or better yet, subscribe so you never miss a single episode. And remember, much more of the Dabo Belichick conversation coming on the pod, and also soon this summer on the ACC network.